Hello, welcome to Your Health. My name is Lisa Hart. Cannabis has gone from a criminalized drug to a multi-billion-dollar global boom in just a few short years. It's possible that we are at the start of a new era for marijuana-based medicine. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Trin, President of the Physicians CBD Council, Corey Mangold of Orchid Essentials, Amy Apitizano of Bloom, and Jay Hardenbeck of Med Terra. Our first guest is Dr. Dung Trin. Thank you for joining us. It's nice to have you.
Thank you so much.
So you are the president of the Physicians CBD Council. Tell me what that is.
Well, this is how we started. Many of our physicians in the community, including myself, we sit there, we take care of patients every day, and everyone is bringing in a bottle of CBD. Huh. Doctor, can I take this? What do you think? What do you recommend? And this happens on a daily basis. A number of us decided to look further and investigate into the research, the published data, what the CBD is all about. Is it weed? Is it marijuana? Is it potheads? Because we've been trained and have always believed that there was this negative stigma attached to cannabis, attached to marijuana. And forever, as physicians, we've always steered the discussion away. So if my patient was saying, can I use this CBD bottle, this THC bottle, my next answer, my typical answer is, I'm not sure about that. Let me write you this prescription for your pain medication, because I know that.
Right.
So in the last few years, a number of us have also realized that our patients are starting to replace their pain meds with these products. And for myself personally, as the chief medical officer of a clinical trial organization, I look at data, and I look at data all day. I looked into the data behind cannabis. And as a result of that, a number of us, physicians and nurse practitioners, have gotten together to create a council. And that council, the Physicians CBD Council, is created for a single purpose. We want to first look at evidence-based data. Right. What's been published, whether it's preclinical or clinical, mice, rats, things like that, what's been published so far? And secondly, let's go out and educate our patients about the published data.
Right.
And that's the main goal of the council, education, getting the word out, bringing awareness, and maybe reducing the stigma.
Well, right, and then also educating other physicians. So I want to read you an article, CNBC article, outlining a study that was done by the University of Colorado, and there's a part in there that says the participants said doctors should work to learn more about medical marijuana, including dosage, method of usage, and potential benefits or risk older adults face when using the drug, meaning senior communities.
Seniors.
So in educating other physicians, how will you do that?
The data drives the education.
Okay.
We educate based on what's been published. We educate based on clinical trials that is available, because physicians will look at data. And we don't have a lot of data specific to dosing, because we are early in this boom of cannabis and CBD. And our patients are already there waiting for us to arrive. Right? So we have a course, it's online, it's a digital course, and you see my face teaching it for like 70 plus videos.
Okay.
And where we actually educate.
Okay.
And we educate based on health conditions, cardiac conditions, oncology, pain, and we put in the data that's already been published. Okay. So we actually teach that to both physicians, to nurses, and to many in the industry actually through our course.
Well, that's good. And then, since you already mentioned it, let's talk about the endocannabinoid system. Wait, let me say that again. Let's talk about the endocannabinoid system, because that's a big word. Tell me what it means for people. It
is a long word. Have you ever heard of the cardiac system?
Yes.
Right? That's just your heart and your blood vessels. Have you heard of the respiratory system? That's your lungs, right? And the endocrine system is like your hormones. So the endocannabinoid system is a system that has been around for as long as every other system's been around, but only discovered in the 1990s. We've only discovered it recently, but that system's been around forever.
Right.
And so what is it, right? And how do we discover it? Back in the 1990s, Israeli scientists, what they did was they took apart the compounds of the plant, the compounds of this cannabis plant. And in this compound, they took apart, let's say, THC, CBD, CBN, all the multiple compounds, and they tagged the compounds. And as they tagged the compounds, they had patients take these compounds to see where the compounds ended up in your body, right? If I took CBD, did it end up in my heart, my lungs, my brain? If I took THC, where did it land in our bodies? What are the receptors that bound to these compounds?
Right.
And lo and behold, by taking these compounds and mapping it, we mapped out an entire system called the endocannabinoid system.
Right.
This system has more receptors in it than any other system in our body. It has more receptors than the cardiac system, the pulmonary system, the respiratory,
Right.
And so there are receptors in the brain, the heart, the GI tract. There are receptors in our nervous system. Every organ has these receptors. The question is, what does the endocannabinoid system do?
Right.
What is the purpose of this system? Why is it there, right? So the endocannabinoid system, the purpose of the system is to bring your body into a state of balance.
Okay.
And it's kind of like the yin yang, the Chinese yin yang figure where you have that little squiggly line in the middle.
Right.
And in Chinese medicine, anytime you have more yang than yin, you're in trouble. Anytime you have more yin than yang, you're in trouble. Disease forms and there's pain. The endocannabinoid system is kind of like the yin and yang of your body, and it keeps everything in a state of what we call homeostasis.
Okay.
That's a medical term for balance. Let me give you some examples. Have you ever gone jogging or running before where as you keep jogging, initially you get tired, but as you keep going, you get what we call the runner's high?
Yes.
Or that second wind, right? So when you're jogging and running, your body starts to heat up. As your body starts to heat up, your muscles are heating up, your bones are heating up. The body's temperature is now out of balance, right? Out of that normal temperature, 98.6. As that temperature is out of balance, the endocannabinoid system recognizes that we have something that's out of balance. It kicks in and it gives you that second wind.
Okay.
Right, to cool down that heated body.
Okay.
Or if you're going to sleep, right, and it's bedtime and you should be sleeping, but your mind just like, it runs, right? And you can't fall asleep.
Right.
That's a mind that's out of balance.
Gotcha.
Right? The endocannabinoid system, what does it do? It kicks in and it relaxes your mind
Okay.
to help you fall asleep.
So let's talk about how THC and CBD interact with this system, because obviously each one is going to be doing something different. So how does it react?
Exactly. Great question. THC, CBD, all on the same plant. And they're on the same plant for a reason. One actually kind of counters the other, right? If THC makes you feel super high, right, CBD actually calms you down. If THC makes you, for some reason, if you took too much THC and it makes you anxious, CBD is a calmer.
Okay.
It works together. We call it, there's a state where when THC and CBD right, works together, it's a state that works together more effectively than one alone.
Okay.
Obviously, CBD will work on its own. THC works on its own. We have data published that both are effective.
Right.
But when you put both together, and at some certain ratios, right, to be defined over time, it works better together overall.
All right.
Yes.
And then let's talk a little bit difference between hemp-derived CBD and cannabis-derived CBD. What is the difference there?
The exact same structure. CBD from hemp looks like CBD from the marijuana plant.
Oh, really?
They're both cannabis.
Yes.
They're both cannabis. Exact same structure. The difference is this. right? The marijuana plant has a higher concentration of THC, whereas the hemp plant, to be defined as hemp, you need to have less than 0.3% THC.
Oh, I see.
And that's the difference.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of products on the market today that you can get either CBD or THC or possibly both, but I really don't know. So how do you know the legitimacy of a product?
Great question. How do you know if this is legit versus this? Because when you go to the market or when you go to an event that's a CBD event, there's like 50 different vendors.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I tell my patients to look for three things. I tell them to ask three questions. Question number one, and this question is asked to the vendor, to the seller, does your product have a certificate of authenticity or a certificate of analysis? A certificate of analysis, a COA certificate. That certificate is a document from a third-party lab where the vendor sends in their product to the third-party lab. The lab runs its analysis and spits back a piece of paper that says, this product has this amount of THC in it, this product has this amount of CBD in it, this product has no pesticides, right? It tells you what's in the product.
Okay.
If a vendor does not have a COA, then you don't know what's in it, right?
Right.
And they probably don't even know what's in it, right? So question number one. Question number two is this. Is the hemp, is the CBD farmed in America?
Okay.
Because at least in American farms, there are some regulatory process that is looked at, right?
Gotcha.
Compared to a product that is from China, from a different country. You don't know what they do in their farms, right?
Right.
So is it made in America, made in the USA? Question number three is about where the hemp and the CBD is processed, the factory that it's processed in, right? The question is your factory, is your facility GMP certified? GMP stands for good manufacturing process.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Because if you're GMP certified, the FDA drops by and checks you out.
Gotcha.
Right? You got to follow regulatory rules. You got to follow quality standards.
Right.
Because if you're not GMP certified, how do you know it's not made from your garage?
That's right.
Right?
It's frightening.
So 3 questions, you need 3 yeses.
Okay, perfect. And then what do you think the potential future uses of CBD will be? I know you've done some studies and you've found amazing results from a variety of different things for a variety of different diseases.
So we have compiled a database, and because we're in clinical research, right? The research that I do in my office isn't CBD research or THC. It's very difficult actually to do clinical research because it's fairly illegal, right? But we compile a database. Every time a study is published, we add it to our database.
Okay.
And we have this database that's based on health conditions, and there are a lot of good potential. Did you know that last year, the first FDA-approved CBD medication was released? The first FDA-approved CBD medication.
Excellent.
For the treatment of seizures in children.
Oh, in children?
In children, FDA approved. It meant that went through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials successfully.
Right.
And it's impressive. It's not going to be the only one approved. There are many in the pipeline.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what we're looking forward to is the future of the CBD and how it can be applied to many of the diseases and possibly moving people off of opioids.
It's huge. Opioid is a huge issue in the United States. The opioid death graph is like this, exponentially increasing. In 2017, I believe we had over 70,000 patients died from opioid overdoses. And it's something that cannabis is an answer to, I believe personally. And we have data that shows that.
Well, congratulations. Good for you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you being with us and keep up the good work.
Thanks so much, Lisa.
You're welcome.
All right.
After the break, we will speak with Corey Mangold and Amy Apitizano.
I'm a strong believer that there's something for everyone out there. But some people never stop searching. I've looked long and hard through these parts, and I thank my lucky stars I stumbled across a special place, a unique place, where you never know what you'll find. The Trading Post, only on Channel 6.
We start each day with one goal in mind: to supply you with the power of the highest quality CBD. Power for a mom to keep up with her kids. Power for an athlete to raise the bar. Power to turn old aches into new aspirations. Look beyond your limits and focus on your potential. Med Terra, our CBD, your health.
Welcome back. Well, THC and CBD are on high demand, as well as the products that are popping up in various cities around our area. So I have Corey Mangold with me, as well as Amy Apitizano, who we're going to talk about a variety of different things that are happening in the space today. So Amy, let's start with you. You are the founder of the first publicly traded cannabis company here in America. So tell us what's changed since that's happened.
We have seen quite a bit change. We went public in 2012 thinking that we would see federal legalization a little bit faster than we have in this country. We didn't really anticipate what happened in Canada, but I think that our first S3 registration that we filed as somewhat of a Hail Mary to the SEC passing had a lot to do with all of these other companies being able to go public. I think a lot of people didn't think that that was even an avenue for something like this, and it certainly seemed a little crazy at the time that we did it. And we were very surprised when the SEC came back and said, all of your filings, your disclosures, everything has been done properly, and we've gone through all of our bylaws, and there's nothing that says you can't do this. So here you go. And I think we did create a little bit of open runway for what we see in the marketplace today.
Exactly. And Corey, in response to what she's saying, is obviously we've got kind of a plethora of things that are happening in our area, not just here in Orange County, but a variety of different places. Tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic in time right now. Obviously, the stock market, we've seen a huge, bubble burst. We've seen reports of the biggest cannabis companies out there, losing money. So that's definitely concerned shareholders and driven everyone's stock down, to be honest. But it's one of those last man standing. It's a battle. It's you just got to keep fighting, keep running a business like it's a privately held business.
Right.
Keep building revenues, building profits, and I think profit is the most important thing. And it'll rebound. Same thing happened in cryptocurrency. Same thing happened where I started my career in the .com boom. And it's one of those things that's just a cycle of the next big thing.
Right.
And it will stabilize, but it's been an interesting road going public and being public, and
right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can you cut that? I think it has really interesting potential implications on federal legalization, because now it's not just cannabis business owners who are trying to push for this. It's not just the handful of doctors who are advocating. Now we have the majority of our country as shareholders, which means politicians, even if they don't have legal cannabis in their jurisdiction, their constituents are likely invested in a cannabis company and have reason for this to move forward.
Right.
A lot of the reason that we're seeing this bubble burst is people have really underestimated how hard it is to operate a federally illegal business. So these companies went public in Canada, but they're still relying on the US market. And the inability to progress and to scale like a normal company would has really impeded the progress of a lot of these businesses.
So are you strictly online?
No, there's no online in THC because it's federally legal, so you can't ship it.
Gotcha. So it's all THC.
But no, we're a brand, so we're a house of brands actually, and so we have everything from products to brands, and are distributed in over 500 retail locations.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, great.
And we carry some of their products.
Oh, okay,
now.
great. Okay, so then from your perspective, having a dispensary now in Santa Ana, what are some of your challenges?
So everyone knows banking is a challenge for cannabis companies, but what people are not realizing is that those challenges don't end there. That the federal government has some measure of regulation over every type of business in this country. So we've had problems getting payroll. We've had problems getting lease space for even just accounting staff to work at our corporate headquarters. We've been kicked out of insurance companies, denied insurance and healthcare, denied 401ks for our staff. When you lose a payroll company or you lose a bank, it's extremely challenging, especially at a company of our size, to have to start from scratch. So like I said earlier, the federal illegality really impedes our ability to grow at the pace that we should be growing, because most businesses don't have to start from scratch with their payroll company. Most businesses don't have to deal with how do we cut paychecks when our bank account just got shut down and they mailed us a cashier's check 2 weeks before Christmas and we can't pay our staff. So there are things like that people don't realize that this federal illegality touches, as well as this regulation is all over the place. Every city, state, county will have their own piece of that regulation, and we know, when the feds legalize, that there will be another layer of regulation, but it's just really disjointed, and it makes it very hard to operate on the economies of scale. We have businesses in 2 states, and it's like having 2 completely separate businesses. Sure. I know Orchid is multi-state, and I'm sure you experienced the same thing. It's almost, we have to have 2 separate compliance departments between states, and 2 marketing departments. Like, everything is different.
Banking and accounting.
Yes. So you're experiencing the same kind of thing, but not from their perspective, because they have something on the street. But how does that work as a global
issues.
thing?
Yeah, same issues. We've lost 3 bank accounts. I've lost personal bank accounts.
Oh my God.
I actually had E-Trade call me and shut down my investment account because I was the CEO of a cannabis company. So it's something that not only affects our personal lives, but on the business side, as a brand similar to a dispensary or any organization, you rely on banking, you rely on lines of credit, you rely on financing, you rely on different debt instruments that are available in every aspect of business.
Right.
One of my other companies has been top 10 places to work in Orange County for the last 5 years. I've been, operating and owning businesses for 21 years now.
Right.
And this is hands down the most difficult and painful industry I've ever been in.
Right.
And I just figured out how to become a millionaire in cannabis, and it's to start with 10 million.
And something else that I've found really interesting as we've gone through that is that people expect us to operate on the level of an Amazon. I mean, they're accustomed to amazing customer service in this country, not realizing that we're just hobbling together all of these, whatever services will work with us. Softwares don't talk to each other. Online order systems are really wonky because of the federal illegality. So they come to us thinking that this is a customer service issue, or you guys don't know what you're doing, and it's really just limited resources. Amazon's driving a Ferrari, we're driving a jalopy.
With 3 wheels.
With 3 wheels.
With 3 wheels. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So and let's talk a little bit about, now I know there's been discussion about a black market situation that's happening right now. Both of you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the black market is huge. That's the illicit market. It's massive. It not only affects operators here in California and Oregon and all the legal states, but we're seeing it show up everywhere now. I mean, they're catching U-Haul trucks in almost every state of the country. Most of the businesses, a lot of the businesses in California have already moved back over to the black market. They've not renewed their licenses.
Oh boy.
We saw this in Oregon, we saw it in Washington, we saw it in Colorado, we've seen it in Nevada. California is just at a much larger scale.
Right.
In Colorado and Oregon, in the first 24 months, 85% of the businesses went under. We're going to start seeing that here. A lot of companies moving over to the black market. And to be honest, a lot of the companies, as Amy will attest to, in California are from the black market. They came over to the legal market, they got licensed, and they're like, wow, we're paying 80% effective tax by the time a product gets to a customer.
Right.
There's no way to make money. I mean, it is extremely thin margin. Right. Everybody looks at cannabis and go, oh man, it's a plant. You guys must make tons of money. It's not that way. I'm sure in the black market they do make tons of money. But in our industry, in the legal industry, the taxes are so high
Right.
The licensing is such a painful process and so expensive. Companies invest millions and millions of dollars, as both of our companies have,
Right.
into licensing, into different, integrations and such. And it's very difficult, especially when you don't have banks behind you where you can go
Right.
pull from, those capital resources, and you're trying to do it all on your own. It's equivalent to starting a pharmaceutical company with $100,000 and trying to get through FDA trials.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's tough. The black market's growing, and that's where we see a lot of the issues that we see in the news. People getting
Right.
sick, this or that.
Right.
In the black market, there is no testing. You have no idea what you're ingesting.
Right.
And most commonly, we see myclobutanol, which is from Eagle 20, which is a pesticide that
Right.
cultivators have used for over a decade. Nearly every cultivator was using it up until a couple years ago, and now we're seeing products come out in the black market that have tons of myclobutanol. As we saw 2 years ago when I started Orchid, it was the big story on NBC, that investigative report a couple years ago.
Right.
That guy in Orange County getting sick, and it was from myclobutanol, which
Right.
when it's heated up, it turns into hydrogen cyanide. So there's a growing black market, and it's important that consumers know what stores are legal, because a lot of people, even here in South Orange County, say, "Oh, I go to the store in Costa Mesa, or I go to the store in Lake Forest," and you're like, "No,
No,
those aren't legal." There's only I don't know how many there are now, 19 or so in Santa Ana.
Not very many, yeah.
17, something like that,
Right.
in Santa Ana. And
But
that's
they're
it.
only Santa Ana, though.
Only Santa Ana.
Because that's the only place that you can have it. Is that
Correct.
Okay. And that's where you guys are located, right?
We're located in Santa Ana.
Right,
yeah.
okay.
And I think, Corey did a really good job of touching on how that affects the business.
Right.
I'd love to expand on how that affects the consumer. As he mentioned, finding a legal shop is
Right.
the most important, and that's something that, I'm a bit of a soapboxer with, because, I think about whether it would be my children, my parents, my grandparents. I don't want them in that situation. It's unhealthy. They're targets for strong arm robbery because what are they going to do? They can't call the police, and they're full of cash. It's not a situation I want any of my loved ones in.
Right.
Those are products I don't want them buying. And I think where we're at is this weird spot, because people are accustomed to shopping that way on the black market, whereas if somebody popped up a moonshine shop on the corner, everyone would freak out.
Exactly.
No one would shop there. They'd be raided and shut down immediately.
And they go to prison.
They'd go to prison.
Right.
They would get pursued by the IRS for not paying taxes. So it's this very weird situation where no one's really policing it. So the rules are voluntary at this point in California.
Yep.
They put mechanisms in to fine them, things like that. None of that has been utilized. So it's weird for us as operators to say we're killing ourselves and spending a fortune to comply, because we want to, because we believe it's the right thing to do, because we believe it's the only way the industry is going to properly progress forward.
Right.
Making people sick is 10 steps backwards.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's making them
Right.
mistrust everything. And that's where we wanted to avoid that pitfall.
Yep.
Well, let's talk to our community of seniors, which is what we talked to Dr. Trin about. We're seeing more and more seniors now giving up their old medications to go to places like what you offer and having products like yours. So what are some of the trends that you guys are seeing now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's definitely the fastest growing demographic. My grandfather and my in-laws are both residents of Laguna Woods.
Okay.
And both use CBD and THC, and shop at Bloom and use Orchid products.
Wow.
So it's but we are seeing the 55 plus demographic as the fastest moving demographic. And I think it's because, health and wellness is becoming something that's ever more important in our lifestyles.
Right.
The amount of vegans and vegetarians is doubling and tripling every year. People are more, interested in their diet and their health. And as we see that, we're going to see a lot of people kind of stepping out of their norms of the 2 martinis every night. And now they're eating a cookie or smoking a doobie or hitting a vape or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But they're starting to use cannabis for different things, everything from medical to just taking the edge off or winding down at the end of the day,
Right.
replacing the alcohol, replacing the pharmaceutical drugs. So I think it's very important, and I think people should be very open-minded to it.
Yes.
I think that's been the biggest struggle with the 55 plus demographic, is getting them to realize that Yeah, it's been illegal forever. We knew
Right.
in the 60s and 70s it was very widely consumed. But at the end of the day, it's literally killed no one ever. You know,
Right.
alcohol and tobacco kill hundreds of thousands of people every single year. Yet they're
Right.
totally legal, and you can
Right.
consume them wherever and buy them at wherever and have it at a restaurant.
Exactly.
So, you know, I look at that and say, well, it's obvious that this is way safer. So you should have no qualms about it.
Right.
You know?
I think to what Dr. Trin was speaking on, it's something that I say a lot in my speaking is that cannabis and CBD and cannabinoids are something that I feel fundamentally give to your body, whether that's giving you wellness, whether it's giving you rest, whether it's giving you taking the edge off without negative side effects. And I think as people become more educated on that, the stigma softens. I think that CBD has helped destigmatize cannabis quite a
Yes.
bit. And I also think in terms of trends, we're going to start seeing more cannabinoids. So everyone talks about CBD, everyone talks about THC, but there are 114 known cannabinoids at this point, and who knows how
And
many
that's doubling.
unknown
Yeah.
cannabinoids, and that's really due to a lack of proper research. So I think
Right.
we're going to start seeing things come out. CBN is one we're finding very, very popular, CBG among our baby boomer community, because again, a lot of people want an unintoxicating product. I think that the stigma was so hyper focused on crazy people getting high, and most people that come to our stores don't want to get high. I get more questions on what can I buy and benefit from this without getting high.
Okay.
So I think that we're going to see a lot more just general wellness supplement category
Right.
type of products.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
Yeah, agreed. The alternative cannabinoids, the lesser known cannabinoids, as Amy stated, there's 114 known and documented. You know, that number is climbing every week, it seems.
Right.
I mean, the fact about cannabis is it's like the ocean. We know so little about it.
Right.
We're barely scratching the surface, and we're not going to be able to be thought leaders and innovators within cannabis while it's still federally illegal. And
Right.
that's why other countries are outpacing us very quickly.
Right.
And the longer it takes us to get rid of the prohibition on cannabis and make it federally legal, we're going to be falling behind. And these other countries are going to the moon, and we're going to be left standing here going, how did all those countries get to the moon and we're still stuck here
Right.
in a jalopy?
Right.
You know, so it's there's a lot of elements that play into the growth of not only the industry, but the accessibility.
Right.
And the scientific studies, the clinical trials, the research. We're developing some stuff right now in beauty and skincare
Oh,
that I
really?
think is very, very interesting in the way that different cannabinoids, and not just CBD, CBG, CBN, different cannabinoids, even THC, how they interact with the skin and the cells and what they do to repair the
Wow.
cells. And I know I've been using a face serum for a couple weeks now, and it literally within like a week, it felt like my crow's feet are gone. They're probably not. I'm sure you're like, what
And
are you talking about? They're
he's
still
really
there.
80 years old or 90. Wow, he looks amazing.
But at least what I see in the mirror looks better. But yeah, there's
There's
a
good
lot
stuff
still
coming
to be
down.
developed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are some things that that you need to have happen, or what can some of our community folks do to help things along? I mean, what can they do?
I think talking to your politicians is really important. They need to hear from their constituents in terms of who's using it for wellness. Why are you using it? This is not about drugs. I think that the Laguna Woods community would be a much more respected voice on this topic than 21-year-old voters.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to be taken seriously. They're going to be heard from a medical standpoint. And I personally believe that no one has the right to tell you you can't relieve a symptom or a pain in a natural way. We were sort of talking off camera about jobs being a huge issue. A lot of people are afraid to use THC if they get drug tested at their job.
Right.
I, as an employer, think, you know, it's fine for people to go home and drink alcohol, but not THC.
Yeah.
I'd rather have, you know, a staff who's not hungover, a staff who feels good. If they're suffering from bodily pain, they're not, you know, focused on their pain while they're at work. It's a wellness tool, and that's the mindset that everyone needs to get into. You know, we have a right as a duty as an employer to provide a safe workspace, an ergonomic workspace. To me, this is the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. And a big thing for me is the opioid epidemic. I mean, we look at how slow the government is to do anything there. We know the perpetrators. We know what they've done and what they've turned their back on and what they've allowed to happen. The FDA has ownership in there. So does the federal government. I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed by these drugs. Cannabis has literally never killed a single person.
Right.
And we're fighting and struggling in this business, and we can't get banked. But the guys peddling the real drugs that actually kill people get lines of credit from from Chase.
And out of the people who have passed away, it's such a ripple effect, because how many people are they affecting, and how many people haven't passed away but still ruined or lost their lives in some way, shape, or form? They're either permanently mentally ill from these drugs or have just completely destroyed every ability to function and be normal in society. It's completely criminal, and to your point, it's insane that we can't even get bank accounts.
It is. Another important thing I would say is a community like Laguna Woods should speak up and have their own store. I mean, it's kind of interesting that everybody has to drive all the way to Santa Ana. We know the deliveries out there. You and I both know 99.9% of them are illegal, which they're delivering you illegal product. And it's you don't know unless you're in a licensed dispensary.
Right.
I think Laguna Woods having a licensed dispensary, having a shop where it's residents, or at least nearby in Lake Forest, somewhere where the residents of Laguna Woods can go and get products and know that they're safe and they have COA, they're in metric, and they're above board. That's something that's important, because consumer safety should be first and foremost.
Exactly.
And when you have 85% of your industry is black market, is illicit, and is dirty, and is poisoning people and making people sick, you want to make sure that your residents in your community don't have access to those, and they only have access to legal, licensed, unadulterated products.
Right, and that's what we're doing here with the show, obviously with the Physicians CBD Council. I mean, there's more and more education out there, and then what you're saying and what you're doing, I mean, more education and letting people know to get rid of the stigma, as well as what products you are actually using is super important. So I appreciate you both being here. Thank you so much. Great information.
Good. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. When we come back, we will discuss the cultivation and growth of CBD products with Jay Hardenbach of Med Terra. Stay with us.
I had been with another hospice for my husband, Ed. After about 2 months, I thought, they're not doing much for me. So I went to the computer and brought up the list of hospices, and there was OC. Their response was immediate. They did everything. They had all their ducks in the row, and that's what I was looking for. It was comforting till the very end. And then at the very end, the last 3 days, it was continuous care, and nobody ever left him.
I started Sterling Financial under the premise that there was a need for integrity in this industry, as well as quality service.
There's such volatility in the stock market. One day it could be up 100 points, the next day it could be down 500 points. Well, what we like to do is be able to have people go to bed and wake up the next morning knowing that their money is safe and secure.
That's what we try to do here at Sterling Financial Advisors, is to create peace of mind and quality of life in retirement.
Welcome back. I have Jay Hardenbach here, who is with Med Terra, and they are one of the fastest growing CBD companies in the world, as well as the most CBD distributed products.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. I hope I said that all right.
That's perfect. Thank you, Lisa, for having me on.
You're welcome. And tell me a little bit about what is Med Terra? Who is Med Terra?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. So Med Terra is a CBD company, so we focus purely on CBD products. And we are focused on e-commerce products as well as selling into retailers. And a lot of what we do, I think, is a little bit different than the industry. We work directly with a farm in Kentucky to grow Med Terra specific hemp, and then we formulate it into various products like CBD tinctures, which a lot of people are familiar with, all the way to supplements that take CBD and blend it with other ingredients to get an enhanced effect.
So let's talk about the cultivation process, because I'm sure that many of our viewers don't know anything about it. I wouldn't know where to start. First of all, why did you go outside of our state to do it, and then what is the process like to cultivate it, bringing it to distribution, and then obviously having people consume?
Absolutely. Well, in 2014, with the Farm Bill being signed in 2014, it made hemp fully legal for the first time, really since 1937.
Okay.
And so the first two states that were really quickly to adopt these hemp pilot programs were Kentucky and Colorado.
I see.
So California now has a significant amount of hemp being grown in it, but that's relatively new. That's as of 2018 and 2019. So when we were looking to start as a company back in 2017, our two options were Colorado and Kentucky.
I see.
And Kentucky really is a perfect place to grow it. Where Colorado has some ties into medical marijuana, Kentucky is only focused on hemp. And so we were getting the best genetics as well as the best farmers to grow the hemp for us.
So when you talk about growing hemp versus some of the other, obviously cannabis.
Yeah, sure.
What are some of the things that you need to be concerned with?
Yeah, I think from two sides, right? So from a consumer standpoint, you need to be making sure where the hemp's coming from, right?
Okay.
That it's grown in the United States, so that there's able to have regulations and restrictions on how it's being grown. The quality and the content, so making sure that the product's tested. For us as a company, when we're evaluating different suppliers, we're making sure that they're GMP certified, right, so that they're familiar with good manufacturing practices, but also able to scale and grow with us. As a company, we started in my living room, and now we employ over 100 people, and we're selling throughout the world. Having partners that can grow with us is incredibly important, so that when we start selling in, we're not selling out.
So when you cultivate it, just kind of give me an idea of what does it take to do it?
Yeah, well, so I think the joke is that it grows like a weed, and there are some aspects of that are true, but it actually is a little bit difficult to grow because of the conditions and the seasonality. Okay. So this is a plant that's we plant right around May or June. So we'll start with these baby little plants called clones, which are basically seedlings of the mother plant.
Okay.
And we plant those in the fields in May and June, and then we harvest it in October. Right now, Med Terra is growing about 1,000 acres of hemp, so it's a large operation.
Right.
The process of it is relatively kind of set it and forget it, but there's a lot of room for error because of these strains being so specifically designed to grow CBD. They can sometimes be susceptible to environmental concerns.
Okay.
The other concern too is that your field. In Kentucky, you can't grow with pesticides, right? And you have to grow it organically.
Okay.
So if you have a nearby farm that's maybe violating the rules, they could potentially ruin your crop, which is a concern as well.
Wow, and you come from the science background, so you know a lot about it. So what are some of the things that you found just by being in the science industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with CBD, there's a huge room for more research, right? And we've got preliminary research showing that CBD can be very effective from an anti-inflammatory standpoint,
right,
as well as being able to modulate serotonin levels in the brain, which is tied to anxiety and things like that. Mm-hmm. We're doing that research now with the Baylor College of Medicine on Med Terra's products specifically to validate, where are they working, and more importantly, I think for the industry, where they don't work. And I think there's this confusion that CBD can fix everything. What it can do is fight, like I said, inflammation and help with some brain serotonin levels like anxiety. That's where CBD should be working and treating. If it doesn't fit within that realm, it really shouldn't be used, or at least not considered. And so I think clearing that up is going to be really important for the industry.
So speaking of that, we had Dr. Trin on earlier who talked a lot about the differences of CBD and THCs and the effects on the body.
Sure.
And then he also is part of the Physician CBD Council, which is helping spread the word, exactly what you're talking about. So tell me, what are some of your thoughts about what he said?
Yeah, I think he's right on it. So he's talking about the endocannabinoid system. So if we look at the endocannabinoid system, this really was something that was developed in the early, or understood in the early 90s and discovered. And if we look at from a human anatomy standpoint, that's a relatively, recent discovery, going back obviously with humans being studied, for the last thousands of years. Mm-hmm. And so with this endocannabinoid system, there's still a lot to be learned. But what we're seeing is that the body produces things called endocannabinoids, which are cannabinoids that the body's producing internally. And that, I think, catches a lot of people by surprise, that our body is actually producing similar compounds to CBD. Mm-hmm. Where that can get out of whack if your omega-3s are down, or you're not sleeping well, or you're stressed out, then need for phytocannabinoids can really, phytocannabinoids can really help with that. Mm-hmm. And so that's how CBD works and THC works, is by interacting with that endocannabinoid system, which is just a collection of neurotransmitters throughout the body.
So earlier we had Amy and Corey that talked a little bit about some of the challenges that they're having, primarily because they're on the THC side. Are you experiencing any challenges from maybe a black market situation with CBD?
So that's actually a really interesting point. So a lot of the challenges that THC and CBD are facing from a regulatory standpoint are very similar. So when we first started, banking was an issue. Being able to advertise and talk about CBD was an issue. We don't really have the black market concerns that THC does have, but there's still a stigma associated with CBD, which we're trying to fight against. And so it's interesting seeing how the two different industries with THC and CBD both evolving. I think they're both complementary in the issues that they're facing, and the two different industries are just tackling them in different ways.
Now, I mentioned earlier that you have a science background. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you actually came about the CBD product itself.
Absolutely. So my degree is in biomedical engineering. I always was really interested on the medical side, and actually at one point wanted to become a physician. And I think this desire of having some type of entrepreneurial effort just kind of steered me away from medical school. But my business partner, JP, in starting Med Terra, was very familiar with the CBD industry and reached out to me saying, I believe CBD and hemp are going to be a very large thing, and we just need to potentially move on it. Do you know anything about it? And at that point, I had never heard of CBD, and so this is back in 2016. And so he gets all the credit for starting Med Terra. And the first thing I did was do research, though. If I was going to put my name on or behind a company, I certainly wanted to be confident in the products that we were selling.
Right.
And what we saw was this huge opportunity to be disruptive. There was preliminary science showing CBD could be incredibly efficacious, but people really didn't understand how it was working. But we knew that there was something there, and that's where we actually got started with it. And I was able to confirm that with my background.
Excellent, excellent. And let's talk a little bit about that, because many of our seniors are using opioids for pain.
Yep.
And you're certainly finding that with your products and CBD in general, they're moving away from those and using CBD for pain. Tell me what you're finding.
Well, I think there's this larger push to just health and wellness and self-care in the United States and even in the world. And so when we're looking at opioids or really just any type of prescription medication, I think there's a willingness now more than ever to look for a natural alternative, or at least to give something another try.
Right.
And so I think that's perfectly aligning with obviously CBD becoming available. And so, there's still a lot of research that needs to be done on where CBD can be helpful for pain and where maybe an opioid is necessary. But I think that willingness to actually try it and even have a conversation about it is exciting, and certainly leaning towards obviously making people a little bit more healthier.
Exactly. And then one last thing is, you mentioned that your products go through obviously quality assurance.
Sure.
What are some things that people should be looking for in products that they're going to be purchasing?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just saw a really interesting article. So most CBD companies or most CBD products tested don't have the same amount of CBD that's in the bottle that's being claimed on the outside of the bottle. So to start, obviously the quality, making sure that that's there is really important. So for consumers that are looking to verify that, there's something called a certificate of analysis, or a COA. Every CBD company should be able to provide that. So if you're unsure as to whether the product is legitimate, calling the company or reaching out to the company should be able to provide that. In addition, not only making sure that the CBD quality or the content's there, but what are the other ingredients or the other compounds?
Okay.
Sometimes there can be solvents or pesticides, if they're growing it improperly, can be there.
Okay.
What has now happened in the industry, I think, recognizes that some consumers are willing to go to that extra length, but some consumers just want to look on the label and be confident. And so now there's a third-party system called the U.S. Hemp Authority. So Med Terra was one of the first 13 companies admitted into that authority. However, now there's more companies entering it, and so you'll see an orange H on the side of the bottle. And so if the orange H is present on those products, you can be assured that that product's been third-party tested and the company's doing the right things.
That's excellent. Good information.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. I appreciate you taking the time.
Lisa, thank you for having me on.
All right. For more information, visit physiciancbdcouncil.com, orchidessentials.com, letsbloom.com, and medterracbd.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time to learn more about your health.